Hello and welcome into High School Roundup. It's October. The first episode of October means we're over halfway into the Whitfield football season. And things are really starting to ramp up for the playoff chase. I'm Zach Prosba. Joining me today, as always, the three of us on set, Matt Hagee and Mr. Paraphrase himself, Anthony D'Agostino. Guys, how you doing? Anthony, I'm going to start with you so you can't just copy what Matt says.
This week has been some pretty great week of football. You know, my favorite part of the week, PCN shoot that we had with CUTV. Always great to have PCN to take our feed and put it on live television across the state. I was on camera in the elements, and it was just a great game, actually. A great atmosphere as well.
Well, it's great to have the goatee back on High School Round. It's great to have it back. Great week, as he said, even bigger week coming up this week. It's Judgment Week, folks.
Absolutely, and we'll get into that a little bit later in the show, including our game of the week, probably our game of the year that we're covering, which we'll get to momentarily. But first off, we're going to look back at last week, start with some highlights, of course, and we're going to go to our friends from South Union Township where they had Laurel Highlands taking on York. And I was talking to Jerry Dupay, who is part of South Union Township Sports, and he was saying, this game should be over quickly. York, they're a good team, but they're not good enough to face Laurel Highlands. It was a lot closer than that, Anthony, and this was a very high-scoring game.
Yeah, and York actually came within, I think, a touchdown in the first half. A touchdown in the first half, and Laurel Highlands was up in the first half. But a really high-scoring game. We're going to check out the highlights. Laurel Highlands strikes first with Lucas Boyle, a 3-yard run, and then, again, Jimmy Pierce here, 2-yard run, gets the touchdown. Jimmy Pierce takes it himself up the middle. Quarterback, 79-yard run, hits pay dirt, got one man behind him, and finally gets tripped up in the end zone. Touchdown, Jimmy Pierce and Laurel Highlands. Then York strikes back. Ryan Everly, 25-yard pass to Eric Berkovich, and he finds a way to get through the defense, breaks a few tackles, and gets into the end zone. And then Jimmy Pierce at quarterback, gonna pass it this time. 40-yard pass deep down the field to who but Chad Livingston. That sets up a touchdown on the next play. Then York, Ryan Everly, 55-yard pass to Jordan Bryan. And then they were to go on, after this touchdown, have a fake field goal and score a two-point conversion. And then York, triple fake flea flicker deep down the field. He's wide open. That's Jordan Bryan from Ryan Everly, 31-yard pass. Now, Laurel Highlands, that was all the first quarter. This is the second quarter. Jimmy Pierce, 4-yard run, hits pay dirt. Then York takes it. Ian Edenfield, 65-yard fumble return for Laurel Highlands. York lost the ball, and Ian Edenfield takes it himself all the way back for the 65-yard touchdown. This is halftime. Laurel Highlands 41, York 21. Then third quarter, Jimmy Pierce takes it himself, 7-yard run. Then Jimmy Pierce again. He can do everything. He's got a 20-yard run to the touchdown. Laurel Highlands, this time it's a different quarterback. Will Kerwaski going to take it himself, 7-yard run for the Laurel Highlands. Then York, Eric Berkovich, 19-yard touchdown run, untouched. Now, fourth quarter, York, Dustin Schoaf is going to take it himself up the middle, breaks the tackle there, then not going to get touched until he gets into the end zone for the York touchdown. Laurel Highlands, BJ Savini is going to take a 1-yard run up the middle for the touchdown. And then last but not least, York is going to score once more to end the game at York Jordan Poor. It's a 45-yard run to the outside with a pitched nice toss. No one is going to be able to get him as he goes into the end zone. 45 yards to the touchdown. Your final score, Laurel Highlands 70, York 42. And Laurel Highlands currently holds the third playoff spot right now, and this is York's fourth straight loss. But York had a pretty good game. They had some really nice plays, actually some trick plays. I didn't get a chance to put them in the highlights, but they had some really nice trick plays, and one of them may be the top play of this week.
Yeah, you'll have to see that later. But basically all it came down to the defense for York. If they were able to play maybe a little bit tighter, could have been a much closer game and possibly pull the upset of Laurel Highlands. So that'll do it for the highlights for South Union Township. Now we'll look at some other scores in AAA and Quad A. We'll start with the Big Ten Conference in AAA. Belle Vernon and West Mifflin, probably the big matchup of this conference last week. Belle Vernon takes down 21-7, and Elizabeth Ford, a big win over Uniontown, 20-12. Matt, Belle Vernon still the cream of the crop, and they got a big matchup coming up this week.
They do, and their defense really flexed their muscles there against West Mifflin. Then for offensive-wise, two names we were very accustomed to, you two very accustomed to, called the game in week 1. Luke Durgan, 27 carries, 196 yards and touchdown, and Mike Fine with another fine performance with 2 touchdowns.
And then we'll move on to the rest of the scores. Ringgold, 35-6 over Albert Gallatin, and Thomas Jefferson, 42-0 over Trinity. And Anthony, Thomas Jefferson, they're back. After those 2 opening losses, 3 wins in a row, they're 3-2 now.
And Quentin Hill, he rushed for 173 yards on 22 carries. He scored on those touchdown runs, and Thomas Jefferson is back against Trinity. I thought Trinity was played a little not as great football first time we saw them, but this Thomas Jefferson team, as we said, they are back and they're fighting.
Their traditional power, they always find a way. As we look at the standings now, Bell Vernon and Ringgold, matchup of the year in the Big Ten, coming this Friday night. Laurel Highlands, Thomas Jefferson, West Mifflin, all there as well. Trinity and Elizabeth Ford still have some hope left. Guys, talk about Bell Vernon and Ringgold. Matt, you go Bell Vernon. Anthony, you go Ringgold, or flip-flop it, whichever way you want. Which team do you think comes out on top? Don't reveal your pick, but who has an advantage?
I'm going to talk about Bell Vernon's defense. Bell Vernon's defense is the key in this game. They have not seen a rushing attack like Ringgold so far with Shakar Berry and Brandon Small, and you can allude to them even more. Bell Vernon's defense, we saw in week 1, is a strength. They're a strength, and that is what could carry them to winning this game and winning this conference. It all falls on Bell Vernon's defense.
And that it does. We've seen Bell Vernon's defense, really take the game. But I feel like Ringgold, they have a really good offense, and they can get some points on the board. And if they get enough points on the board in the first half, they may be able to hold on, in the second half as well to get that game. We saw 5-0 teams now, undefeated teams that were going up against each other, and we saw that this Mount Pleasant Washington game. Could we see something like that again this week? Because we're going to talk about that later on today.
And before we take a commercial break, we'll go ahead and look at some Quad A action as well in the Foothills. We'll quickly run through it because I know we're already pressed on time. We're talking about all these matchups coming up this week. Altoona and Norwin. Norwin Knights get the big 35-7 win. And McKeesport 61-6 over Hempfield. A big blowout there. Moving on to some more scores. We will see Penn Trafford 63-8 over Latrobe. And a huge upset here. Kiski 23-14 over Plum. Guys, Plum was riding pretty at the top of the standings, and Kiski came in and really kind of surprised all of us.
How about Kiski in this game? They got the big win. Everyone, there was a big story about Plum being 4-0. Plum couldn't get the offense rolling, and it was only 9-7 at halftime, but then credit running back Tariq Grant, for Kiski putting the game away after trading some touchdowns. Big win for Kiski. Kiski might be a playoff team right there.
And we'll see that in a second as we look at the non-conference matchup. Connellsville down by Pitt Central Catholic 56-7. Of course, Anthony, you and I have seen Connellsville this year. They don't seem to be really getting it together so far.
No, they don't. And when you go up against a really good private school like Central Catholic, it's really tough to beat them. They can get a bunch of influx of players from the Pittsburgh school area. So it's really tough to beat a team like that. Credit Connellsville for getting that touchdown, though.
And we'll look at the standings. Penn Trafford, 5-0, the only undefeated team remaining. McKeesport and Plum still at the top. But right there, you mentioned, Matt, Kiski at 3-1. Right now, they would make the playoffs. But they have a huge matchup women this week with Norwin, and you still have teams like Hempfield and Connellsville with a little bit of hope left behind that.
Well, and Kiski, and they'd be third right now because they'd have the advantage over that 3-1 with the win over Plum. But big game with Kiski. If Kiski can knock out Norwin this week, that pretty much solidifies them in the playoffs out of that conference.
And it would be really great to see if Kiski can get into the playoffs after that huge win over Keysport, I believe. And big win for them coming back to win the game. Pretty great to see that for Kiski.
And when we come back after our first commercial break, we'll look at AA and Single A. Our game of the week that was on PCN, Washington at Mount Pleasant. It was a great one. And then, of course, we'll have our picks and schedules later on when we return here on High School Roundup on CUTV.
Complete news, entertainment, and sports coverage from around the area, region, and nation is found right here on CUTV News Center every Thursday at 5 p.m. with anchors Jennifer Germano, Zach Prosba, entertainment with Mike Mays, and sports with Matt Hagee. Follow us on YouTube, CUTV News Center, and on Twitter, CUTV_PA for your complete rebroadcast of your Vulcan sports. News Center airs every Thursday at 5 p.m. on Armstrong and Atlantic Broadband.
And welcome back to Roundup here on CUTV. We looked at AAA and Quad A. Now we're going to go to the lower classifications, but even though the lower classifications doesn't mean the play is any lower. And Matt will surely look at the highlights of the game, maybe of the year in AA. Washington and Mount Pleasant. It was live for us on PCN. You were on the call for that one, and I was behind the switchboard directing it, so I had a first glance of it myself. But let's look at the highlights of this great matchup.
Yeah. The game of the year in Interstate Conference, it was at Mount Pleasant. Mount Pleasant had a 13-game home winning streak coming in here, but Wash-I was the favorite in this game. And as you'll see in the highlights there was a lot of rushing in this game. We'll start right here on 4th down. Jordan West, the backup running back, 20-yard touchdown to give the Little Prexies a 7-0 lead in the first quarter. Now, after a defensive stop, Wash-I tried to give the ball back, but it went over the punter, Zach Parr's head, and Mount Pleasant was set up in prime field position 30 yards away from the end zone, and they would cash in right there. Quick, Chris Wagner, 2-yard run for the touchdown to make it a 7-7 game after one. Now, 3rd and goal here. Pitch toss, Kurt Atkins, Little Prexies' main running back. He gets in the end zone for his first touchdown of the game. We're going to see a lot of more him in the end zone coming up here. Now, 3rd down here. As time's ticking away, Markel Pulliam to Isaiah Robinson, 7-yard touchdown pass to make it 21-7 Little Prexies. Now watch this play here. Johnny Yester out the wide receiver Keith Kaup, who throws a perfect pass downfield. Man, that was a great pass to Kyle Halterman, who goes to the end zone. An unbelievable play, 56 yards, 21-14 Little Prexies. Now, 4th and goal here. Atkins trying to get in again. He gets stopped at the goal line there for Mount Pleasant. Looks like they have all the momentum in the world, but on the next play, they needed to be careful, and they were not careful. Wagner was tackled in the end zone for a safety, and this changed the whole game around. Little Prexies went up 23-14. Now, Little Prexies trying to cash in after the free kick. Markel Pulliam loses the ball, is recovered by Kyle Halterman there, but, as we'll see right here, Mount Pleasant gives the ball right back to Wash-I. Jordan West doing it both on offense and defense in this game. He intercepts Yester on the final play of the 3rd quarter, and the 4th quarter belonged to the Little Prexies. It starts right here. Kenya Davis breaking through the line there after taking a direct snap, gets in the end zone for his first and only touchdown of the game from 28 yards out to make it 31-14. Wash-I had a crazy 2-point conversion then, and then Kurt Atkins, watch this run. He had 3 touchdowns in this game. That might have been the best one there. Just a little spin move on the play, circle button, PlayStation controller. He gets in, and then he hits the hat trick here with his 3rd touchdown of the game to make it 44-14, and that's how the final score ended. The Little Prexies, a dominating win over the Mount Pleasant Vikings. Kurt Atkins and Jordan West, 301 yards on the ground and 4 touchdowns.
And that was amazing. And you mentioned last week Washington may be the most athletic team in AA besides Aliquippa. And I've never seen Washington play before live. Man, are they good. And they're going to be a wrecking force going to Heinz Field later on in the playoffs, most assuredly. As now we'll look at some more AA scores in the Interstate Conference before we look at the standings. Brownsville down by McGuffey 42-12. And Charleroi, they cannot buy a win this year. Waynesburg 47-0 over them. Anthony, talk about one of those games.
Well, Waynesburg taking on Charleroi, shutting them out 47-0, pretty big. I didn't think Charleroi was that bad when we saw them. I know they kind of shot themselves in the foot a few times, but Jack Budala rushed 8 times for 124 yards and scored 2 touchdowns for Waynesburg. So he was a force to be reckoned with when he was playing for Waynesburg against that game.
And then we'll look at some more scores. Derry over Southmoreland, a huge, I don't know if it's an upset really, but it's kind of a surprising result, Matt. 20-13 Derry.
It's a big game standings-wise because we all thought Southmoreland had the advantage to finally make the playoffs for the first time since 1979. That took a hit this week. Southmoreland's up 13-7 here. 1 minute left. Southmoreland gets the punt blocked. Derry ties it, gets their extra point blocked. Southmoreland muffs the kickoff. Derry recovers, and familiar face Tyler Balega hit the winning score with 38 seconds remaining to give Derry the win. The quarterback, Trey Friedline for Derry, played his first game of the season, so we didn't even see him. But Derry took a big step forward in trying to make the playoffs with that big win.
And we'll see how that impacts them in just a moment. It's the non-conference game. Elwood City over Burgettstown 14-0 after Burgettstown just destroyed Charleroi the week before. Now we'll look at the standings, and you'll see there Derry not in the playoff picture yet, but they're now tied with Southmoreland. And Southmoreland, even though they kind of have any advantage right now, that could come into play a little bit later, as well as Burgettstown right there in the middle. Anthony, who do you think of those three, Southmoreland, Burgettstown, Derry, who could possibly sneak in?
Well, I'm liking this Derry team right now. After that big win they had at Southmoreland, I think if they keep that win, use that momentum, they could jump up a few ranks in the standings.
I like Derry too because you look at the schedules coming out. Southmoreland still has to play Wash High. They still have to play Mount Pleasant. Derry's already played those two teams. Southmoreland's going to have to deal with that. Derry has the easiest road to the rest of the way to the schedule. And that last game of the season that we'll have Burgettstown-Brownsville, that could be for Burgettstown maybe making the playoffs. What a story that would be.
I think I remember when we were calling the Derry-Charleroi game, I was in the truck looking at the schedule for Derry, and I think they got the two best teams in that conference out of the way already. I think they get McGuffey maybe a little bit soon, but I mean, McGuffey's good, but they're nowhere near as good as Mount Pleasant or Washington is. As now we'll look at Single A. I believe we're going to start with the Tri-County South first. Yes, indeed we will. Mapletown. Had to say it. My gosh, Mapletown. Finally get to use that this year. 58-24 over Avella and Bentworth. A huge show-me game from last week. 41-20 over Jeff Morgan.
Well, yeah, as we talk about, my gosh, Mapletown, 58-24 over Avella. Huge win for Mapletown, and Dylan Rush scored 8 touchdowns for Mapletown and finished with 387 yards rushing. So really good to see him step up and lead this Mapletown team to the win.
And then moving on to some more scores. Beth Center, who we're going to see this upcoming week, 67-0 over West Green. And in this game, we all picked California to win this game, and they lose 8-0. A very heartbreaking loss,
Yeah.
I have to imagine.
Oh, it is, and I think they still might have been reeling from that Jeff Morgan game the week before, but Cody Allen for Carmichael's was the only one. They scored it in the first quarter, 2-point conversion, that's it. But Cal's offense just can't put it together, and congratulations to Anthony Welsh, 4,000 career rushing yards and counting for him.
And we're going to see him add more to that total hopefully this coming Friday. As now we look at the non-conference, Fraser over Leechburg, 42-7, ramping up for our game of the year, we estimate, for our CUTV schedule. Beth Center, Fraser, matchup of two teams that really don't like each other at all. Guys, same thing with Ringo Bell Vernon. Take one team, one area where you think may come down to decide this matchup.
Okay, Fraser can throw the ball. That is going to be a big difference in this game. If they can get that throwing game going against Beth Center, Fraser has a great chance to win this game because Beth Center doesn't really throw the ball much.
I will say, I think it is supposed to rain, though, so that could really be a detriment. Anthony, where do you think this game could be decided?
And we're looking back at what we had this past week, Washington and Mount Pleasant, where Mount Pleasant likes to throw the ball a lot, and it rained, and they had to stick to their run game. So if it rains, this game is looking like it could go more towards Beth Center. I do have to say, though, penalties. You can't have stupid penalties. I know you don't like each other, but you got to play clean. Yeah.
I mean,
that could be a game changer.
We saw last year, there was a brawl on the field. I think there might have even been a brawl in the stands as well.
Yes,
These teams don't like each other. It's Steelers-Ravens basically in the Tri-County South. And another thing, L.A. Ross, Fraser's running back from last year, he's at GCC now.
Yes, he
I think
is.
if he was there, I think honestly Fraser would be the favorite in this game. But I think you have to go Beth Center because they're at home. But we'll look at our picks a little bit later as we'll move on to the Eastern Conference now and look at some scores there before we go to commercial break. Jeanette, 33-6 over Springdale. And Greensburg Central Catholic, I just mentioned, 42-10 over Sarah Catholic.
And looking at Jeanette, they're a force to be reckoned with. And Kareem Hall led the Jayhawks with 100 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns. And Jeanette led 10-0 at halftime before pulling away with 24 consecutive points in the second half. So this Jeanette team, as we said before, they're a force to be reckoned with, and they're looking to make the playoffs and get to Heinz Field.
And by the way, L.A. Ross in that GCC game, 369 yards, 4 touchdowns.
Exactly. Difference maker in that matchup, possibly. And now we'll look at some other scores. Clareton, 54-6 over Riverview. Nothing new there. But Matt, this Monessen game, 18-0. This game was concluded at the end of a third quarter because of a very kind of jarring reason.
Yes, there was a brawl, an all-out brawl, kind of like Beth Center Fraser, but this got very violent, and the refs, both sides, agreed to stop the game. And Monessen, they got the win because they were up, but on very unfortunate way to see the game end.
Yeah, and Whitfield will have a hearing about that. Possibility Monessen may have to forfeit the rest of their season. From what we're hearing, we'll update you with that as much as we can from what we hear in the coming weeks. And I will look at the Eastern standings. Jeanette, Clairton, Monessen, and Greensburg Central Catholic are there. Springdale, team I'm looking at, though, because I thought they had a chance to upset Jeanette, and they were only down 10-0 at halftime, and they almost were able to pull that out. But we'll come down the last few weeks. They're going to have to make their move or hope somebody starts to slip up. But maybe Monessen or Greensburg Central Catholic as the season winds down. So we're going to take our final break. When we come back, we'll have the upcoming schedules, our picks for all the best games of this week. There's a lot of them. We only have to choose 5 of those. Really difficult. And, of course, our top 3 plays. Can Vecchio be unseated? This may be the best chance he has all year with the play we got at number 1 this week. When we return on High School Roundup.
Save preset 1 for Cal U's best music. More music in the car. More music in the door. More music everywhere. This is 91.9 WCAL Power 92. The home of the Vulcan Nation. Playing Cal U's best music. 91.9 WCAL. WCAL Power 92.
First published in the 1880s, the California Times is the oldest student media at California University. Circulating 3,000 issues weekly on campus and in the surrounding community, the Times' mission is to deliver fair and balanced news to the student population of California University. All students are welcome to be a part of the California Times. Our offices are located in the Natali Student Union. Keep up to date with the Times online at www.caltimes.org, Facebook, and follow us on Twitter.
Welcome back to High School Roundup. We're going to quickly overview the schedules because I really want to get to our picks and kind of really diagnose why we're going with these teams. For the Foothills, Altoona, Latrobe, Connellsville, Plum, Hempfield, Penn Trafford, Norwin at Kiski, and Hopewell at McKeesport is the non-conference matchup. And then going on to AAA in the Big Ten. This is where the big games lie. Ringgold, Bell Vernon, possibly deciding who's going to win this conference. Thomas Jefferson at Albert Gallatin, Uniontown at Trinity, West Mifflin at Laurel Highlands is highlight because we'll have highlights of that contest from South Union Township, and Yock at Elizabeth Forward. Moving on to AA in the Interstate, Charleroi, Washington, McGuffey Dairy, Mount Pleasant at Brownsville, Waynesburg at Quaker Valley, and Southmoreland Burgettstown, a matchup that will definitely have playoff implications later on. And rounding it out in Single A, we'll start with the Eastern Conference. Clairton, Jeanette, 2 of the more traditional powers in the Whitfield get going. And Greensburg Central Catholic at Leechburg, Riverview Sarah Catholic, Springdale Monessen, a big playoff game there as well, and Wilkinsburg at Avella. And then rounding it out, Cal Bentworth, Carmichael's West Green, Jeff Morgan Mapletown, Wilkinsburg Avella, and of course, our game of the week, Fraser Beth Center. Nothing more needs to be said. As guys, we're going to go ahead and go to our picks, diagnose exactly why you picked these teams that you did. As we look at the standings, I'm able to inch just a little bit more forward at 16-4.
Must be nice.
Hey, you beat me in the last week of the season. I have to claim the
know.
title this year. It's my last chance. So now we're going to see. Our first game will be Norwin at Kiski. I'm the only one going with Norwin. I guess I'll take this one just because Kiski's good. I don't know if they've been consistent enough for me to go with them yet. I think Norwin is still a little bit more consistent team. Now, if Kiski wins this game, hats off to them. Prove me wrong, but I'm going to go with the Norwin Knights in this matchup. As we move on to the next game, it will be West Mifflin at Laurel Highlands. Matt, you're picking West Mifflin. Me and Anthony are going LH. Why West Mifflin?
All right, West Mifflin, defense. It all comes down to defense. West Mifflin's defense, they held Bell Vernon pretty strong. And LH's defense, they got shredded by Yock. And we saw what happened when Laurel Highlands played a good defense in Thomas Jefferson. They got shut down. And I think that's the difference. I think that's why West Mifflin will knock off the Mustangs this week.
Well, Anthony, hopefully he's wrong, so we can move on to the standings. So now we're going to look at our third game. And it's a big one. Ringgold at Bell Vernon. Anthony, you're the only one riding with Bell Vernon. Why is that?
Well, I think Bell Vernon, they're at Bell Vernon. They got that huge student fan base, and I think that's going to be a huge, momentum for Bell Vernon. They're going to come into this game. They're going to be pumped for it. I think they're going to be able to take on Ringgold and come away with the win. I like Bell Vernon's chances in this one. I got this gut instinct right now.
I just think Ringgold has too many too many talented players, and one guy in particular,
Too much
Shakar,
offense,
Shakar
yeah.
Berry.
Yeah.
I think he's the big difference. As our fourth game will be Clairton at Jeanette. And we're all riding with Clairton. I think we understand why, and you at home. Clairton is just, they're probably the title favorite in the PIAA this year. I think until they lose, we're always going to ride with them. And looking at our last game, Fraser, Beth Center. Matt, you're the only one going with Fraser. Why?
Well, I alluded it to earlier. If it is clean enough and Fraser can throw the ball, I think that's the difference in this game. Although their defense, which has only allowed 14 points all season in 5 games, half of those came last week on 1 touchdown. It's the defense, but someone else other than Anthony Welsh needs to step up in this game for Beth Center. If they can get a complement person along with Anthony Welsh in this game, I think Beth Center will win this game. But Fraser just has that extra element in that defense. Defense wins championships. This is going to be an amazing game. I'm excited for it. It's going to go to either team, but I just like the Commodores in this one.
And the last time Fraser won this matchup was at Beth Center a couple years ago. That's going to be a big game, as the rest of us are going with Beth Center in that one. So now that'll round out our picks. We'll look at the top players from the previous week. Of course, starting with number 3, and Anthony, take it away.
All right, number 3, it's going to be from our Game of the Week live on PCN. This one, Washington Mount Pleasant. It's Kurt Atkins going up the middle. Going to break a few tackles. Spins around there. Circle button, as we said before, on the PlayStation controller. Boom, touchdown. Kurt Atkins for Wash High.
And then the number 2 play right here, staying with the same game. Johnny Yester out to Keith Kalp. Are you serious with this play? Look at his pass for the wide receiver. Kyle Halterman got it for the touchdown and put Mount Pleasant back in the game. I thought at the time this was going to be the top play of the game, but then we saw the LH Yawk highlights.
And this was an amazing play. We'll see here. 1 reverse, 2 reverse, 3 reverse, go downfield and find the open receiver for what we're calling a double, triple, quadruple flea flicker kind of play. It's not enough to unseat Tim Vecchio. However, how can you unseat a 106-yard interception return? That was just too good of a play. As you see Vecchio running down the field there. But we do have a little bit, kind of an interesting quirk in the episode this week. Is you saw that Yawk play at number 1. It's like we're going back to the future on this because we've covered Yawk games before. The last time was a few years ago, whereas Yawk, Charleroi, and our good friends Clinton Logan and Scott Majeski, who trained me to be on High School Roundup, you used to see how long this was ago because I've been on here for 3 years now. The play was exactly the same. As we'll roll the tape of it, 3 reverses and the flea flicker downfield. It's like if Yawk needs a touchdown, that's the play they go to. Crazy how similar those plays were.
It is. And how about that? We can just dig back into the vault and we can see, and look, there's that play. A little longer than this one, but that's awesome. I've never seen really anything like that before, and good for Yawk. That was back in the days when Yawk was in AA. Now they're in AAA, starting to get the kinks worked out there. That's why Yawk's kind of struggling this year. But I think I'm going to add an extra prediction here. I think Yawk beats Elizabeth Ford this week.
I could see that. So, all right, guys, final thoughts before Judgment Week, as we're calling it.
Oh, it's good. This is special. This is going to be special. Those 3 games, 3 conferences are going to be a next step to being decided this week. Fraser Beth Center, Clairton Jeanette, Ringgold Bell Vernon. Huge rivalry games. Let's also mention that Jeanette game's at home, so that could play advantage to Jayhawks. But Fraser Beth Center, it's basically like Ollie Frazier. Ohio State, Michigan. This is the rivalry game to be at.
Fraser Beth Center, Ringgold Bell Vernon, West Mifflin, Laurel Highlands. 3 huge games that I can think of off the top of my head for this week. You don't want to miss the highlights that we're going to have from Laurel Highlands, West Mifflin, or the Beth Center Fraser game. And you definitely want to stay tuned for next week's show when we pick out the scores. And there may be some upsets as well this week.
Yeah, and I'm just saying, please let my picks be right. I can't lose my first place standing. I have to claim the title this year. So that'll do it for this week's edition of High School Roundup. Be sure, head out to a game this Friday. The conditions may be a little bit poor, but make sure you're able to go see one. And if not, make sure you're able to catch the CUTV broadcast of Fraser Beth Center this weekend, as well as South Union's broadcast of West Mifflin Laurel Highlands. For Anthony D'Agostino, Matt Hagee, I'm Zach Proswith. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you back here next week running down all those great games that we mentioned before.